Topham, and I'm the owner of Cake Hair Salon. Here at Cake Hair Salon, once you walk in the door, everything is perfect. Everything is exactly the way that we want it to look. And that's something we have complete control over. But when you step outside of that door, we lose all control. And it's like the rest of our city, it's completely out of control. We run into all sorts of challenges that every business owner, everyone that's downtown has experience with, and we all know what that looks like. But there are other challenges that we shouldn't have to experience every day, but we do. We went through a phase where in a 10-day period, there were 7 fires lit within this tiny block. That means the fire department having to come out over and over and over again. Shopping carts lit on fire. Somehow that became the trend for about a day. And they would turn them into melted little puddles in the parking lot and then kick all of the burning debris up against all of the local businesses. We can't even begin to tell you all of the challenges that we've run into as a result of this city's lack of leadership, this city's lack of taking control of the situation, and their hands-off approach with the way that they're handling homelessness and some of those challenges. What we need is a very compassionate response, and I'm super excited to welcome all of you here and to be here myself, because I'm here for someone that I've been a big fan of for a lot of years. It goes way, way back. I love people with integrity, and when I think of the word integrity, I think of Rocky Anderson. I can't imagine anyone with more integrity, and I've been a huge, huge fan. I would say he's one of my heroes and has been since the 90s, because even back in the 90s, he had the integrity to take the right approach to things that weren't the popular opinion. Ask anyone in the LGBTQ plus community, and you'll see people that are very supportive of anyone that has the integrity to stick up for them, even before it was cool to do so. Rocky Anderson is also someone that's incredibly compassionate, and to me, those are the 2 biggest deals in a leader. When it comes to compassion, it's such an important part of any kind of leadership. Compassion for the business owners that are going through all of these challenges every day, and compassion for the homeless, to give them the care that they actually need, instead of this super hands-off approach that's not helping anyone or getting people anywhere. It's funny when you have heroes, and when you build in your head like who you think that they are, and you love them and you respect them for all of the things that they do, and then you meet them and you get to know them, and you realize that they're more than what they do, and now you love them and appreciate them, not for what they do, but for who they are. And that's really what this is about, is amazing respect for a man I truly admire, and that's Rocky Anderson. So next up, Laurie Karlik is going to share a couple of things about her experiences that she's run into as well. So give it up to Laurie.
I'm going to start by saying I am not a public speaker, so things must be really bad if I'm up here. I work for a local small business with properties in downtown and in Sugar House. Just this week, we had campers blocking our front door, stolen deliveries that were discarded in our parking lot, a garage break-in, and people sleeping in our planter boxes. When we asked them to move, they moved to the other side of our building and made themselves at home in a different planter box. We were vandalized by an unhoused, drug-addicted 49-time repeat offender in July. While we waited for the police to arrest him, they recognized him from our camera footage. He committed 6 more crimes. He is currently being held, but largely because we show up at court every time so that the judge knows this matters to us. We have had unhoused people living in a temporarily vacant building who put a hole in the roof so that they could have a fire and have a chimney. They stole power from the daycare next door. These children are at risk of harm while simply playing on the playground because of the lawlessness that is allowed to continue. We call and report every single event. I'm sure they're tired of hearing from us. And the mayor likes to say that crime is down, but the calls are way up if you look at the number of calls. Nothing is just being done as a result of the calls. We help all of the residents of our city when we enforce the law. Allowing homelessness helps no one, and it certainly does not help the unhoused who commit crimes in order to be able to survive on the streets. Please help us elect a mayor who cares for all the people and has the leadership ability to stop Salt Lake City's slide of chaos into drugs, criminal behavior, and homelessness. We support Rocky Anderson for mayor.
Well, thank you, Randy, for hosting this event and for sticking it out here in Salt Lake City. He told me once that he was inclined to move out of Salt Lake City. I said, just hang in there. This city is going to turn around. And Laurie, I know that your employer wrote to me when I was mayor, and we may have disagreed on some things or some solutions, but at least he got a lengthy, timely response, more than he told me he's gotten from the present administration, which is no response at all. I was honored to serve as Salt Lake City mayor for 2 terms, from 2000 to 2008. During that time, we built a strong, highly effective team with people who had the expertise and the work ethic and the dedication to get the job done. And as a result, we had an extraordinary record of achievement. Salt Lake City was then viewed nationwide as one of the top cities in which to live and work. Money Magazine ranked Salt Lake City as the best in the West. The U.S. Conference of Mayors named Salt Lake City one of the 10 most livable big cities in the country. Employment Review ranked Salt Lake City as the 5th best place to live and work in the United States. Because of my strong advocacy for the LGBTQ plus community, we received favorable mention even back in those times. Salt Lake City received favorable recognition in the book 50 Fabulous Gay-Friendly Places to Live. Outside Magazine ranked Salt Lake City as one of 18 new American dream towns. And because of my pedestrian safety initiatives, which save lives, we received the City Livability Award from the U.S. Conference of Mayors. We were proud to host the world and to show off our amazing city during the 2002 Salt Lake Winter Olympic Games. Now, Salt Lake City is listed among the most dangerous cities in our country. Our city, my home for almost my entire adult life and a place I've always loved, is degraded, filthy in so many places, unaffordable for most people, and experiencing the failures of homelessness policies that have wholly ignored best practices. And I must say also, it's wholly ignored a compassionate, reasonable, effective response to our joint problem. It's all of our problem to solve the homelessness issues with which we're faced. Visitors to our city often leave shaking their heads, and I've heard it and I've seen it, asking what has happened to your city. Is our city better or worse off than 3 years ago? The answer is obvious. I was recognized as one of the greenest mayors, if not the greenest mayor in the country. Under my leadership, Salt Lake City won the World Leadership Award in London for our environmental programs. #1 for our environmental programs. I received the EPA's Climate Protection Award and the Sierra Club's National Distinguished Service Award. Those awards were not for issuing proclamations and setting long-term goals for somebody else to fulfill in the future. Those awards were for walking the walk, setting goals and then achieving and exceeding them, particularly with respect to a 31% reduction in the emission of greenhouse gases in city operations in just 3 years. We also created Salt Lake City's Green Team and our E2 business initiative, focusing on and achieving environmental and economic sustainability. We also got the University Light Rail back on track and championed mass transit throughout the Wasatch Front. Then we shared our successes as inspiration and a learning tool for mayors across the country, including at the Sundance Summit, where we brought in mayors from all over the country for 3 years. It was hosted and organized by Robert Redford, by the International Council for Local Environmental Initiatives, on whose board I sat, and by me. And we did it for 3 consecutive years. In total, bringing in dozens of mayors, many of them who were absolutely converted to the cause of climate protection. And then they passed on the word, and the movement grew and grew among mayors throughout this country. I presented in several other nations, including China, to mayors and vice mayors, and at side meetings at 3 United Nations conferences on climate change, about how we in Salt Lake City achieved such remarkable, real, replicable results. And I'll tell you, at those conferences, people were blown away to see a mayor from the United States touting the kinds of successes we had when we had a president who had refused to sign on to the Kyoto goals, and yet we pledged before the Olympics that we would not only meet those goals, but exceed them, and that we did way ahead of schedule. The climate crisis poses an existential threat to life on our planet and a threat to the quality of life to everyone, now and for our children, and certainly for later generations. We must all provide effective leadership in whatever ways we can to achieve meaningful and urgent climate protection measures. Under my leadership and with a passionate, highly competent team, Salt Lake City stood out nationally and internationally as a leading city in the international climate protection movement. You can still see a multimedia piece that I researched, produced, and narrated on YouTube that describes the many innovative measures we took to set that example for other cities, stressing the importance of bold leadership with real results achieved to protect against climate chaos. We implemented the nation's most comprehensive restorative justice programs, focusing our criminal justice system not on punishment and retribution, but on pragmatic, constructive, humane solutions to problems that contributed to illegal conduct, the kinds of things that you've heard about earlier here today. The last 2 Salt Lake City administrations, and it's beyond me why they've done this, but they have been content with having the Salt Lake County District's Attorney Office assume the duties of the Salt Lake City Prosecutor's Office. I will restore the City Prosecutor's Office where it belongs. And bringing back the Prosecutor's Office we will once again, with new leadership in the police department, implement sensible, cost-effective, constructive, restorative justice for the benefit of all. Restorative justice.
Yeah.
Restorative justice is about finding solutions that benefit offenders, that benefit victims, and benefit the community at large, taking into account the interests of everyone concerned, never turning a blind eye, never turning a blind eye to those who are in need, who may be suffering from drug addiction, from mental illness problems, never turning a blind eye to the way that our local businesses have been suffering these past years because of the lack of leadership in this city. Part of restorative justice involves diverting people from wasteful, dangerous, destructive jails and prisons whenever possible to opportunities such as mental health and drug addiction programs that turn lives around and cost far less than jailing and imprisoning people. It also involves restoring victims of crime who seem to be completely ignored by the current approach of the current administration. Restoring victims of crime, including restitution for the damage they have suffered. Our restorative justice programs, when I was mayor, were recognized internationally, leading to Salt Lake City being among 3 cities in the world considered for the World Leadership Award, again in London, for public safety solutions. The Salt Lake City Housing Authority, along with other major collaborators, joined in building or renovating over 1,000 units of permanent housing for chronically homeless people when I was mayor. And that housing always involved and provided the opportunities for wraparound services to help those people who are in need succeed. We also supported adequate shelter for homeless people to come in from harsh weather and to find sustenance and transition services. As mayor, I will make certain there is a bed for everyone in our community. Housing and services for people experiencing homelessness will be provided with responsible and accountable management as we build a team with real expertise, following best practices, and collaborate with others who share our dedication to make it all happen. We will no longer be all talk but little action about our values and our compassion toward others. As an administration and as a community, we will together walk the walk and truly mean it when we refer to people in need as our brothers and sisters.
Okay.
And we will ensure that people with serious mental health problems, many of whom make decisions to stay out in the freezing cold as a result of their mental illness, will receive mental health care. It is neither compassionate nor respectful of one's civil liberties to allow mental illness to determine whether severely mentally ill people receive care and be rescued from exposure to life-threatening conditions, including sub-freezing weather. This has been my publicly held position and passion for years. Yet when I vigorously raised it, so many elected officials have dodged the issue entirely, causing many mentally ill people to go without treatment and undermining the quality of life for so many in our community. When I was mayor, we created and grew we created and grew the first citywide after-school and summer program, YouthCity, which has enriched thousands of lives and aided many families throughout this entire region ever since. I conceived and helped drive the Salt Lake City International Jazz Festival with the amazing work of Jerry Floor, who's here today, thank you, Jerry, and his dedicated team of volunteers. The whole thing about the Jazz Festival is to bring joy and entertainment and let everybody, regardless of their economic status, come and enjoy that Jazz Festival. It was held annually for 7 years, and because of our vigorous fundraising efforts and private-public cooperation, we were able to make the festival accessible to everyone, free of charge, bringing diverse people from throughout the city and beyond together in joyous celebration and entertainment. And by the way, we brought people from all around the country who are coming here and staying, saying, where else can you get 3 or 4 days of this kind of music and coming together as a community, and it doesn't cost anything. It was an amazing effort, and we had a lot of great sponsors that helped make it possible, but to do that, you have to approach those sponsors. You have to meet with them, take them out, show them the opportunities, do the work that a mayor ought to do to make these kinds of things happen for a community. After my term in office, the Jazz Festival was never again free of charge, and now it has been allowed to die. I will bring the Salt Lake City International Jazz Festival back for this entire community and all of our visitors. We pushed against more environmentally damaging highways, including the initial illegal Legacy Highway. And that fight brought about very beneficial results. With a new design, new environmental protections, it made a real difference. And we also pushed for the expansion of public transit, particularly light rail, while battling against sprawl. As with my successful fight against what I called the Sprawl Mall, which was planned to be out by the airport, which would have been 100% dependent on vehicle traffic. And it also would have taken so much money away from our existing retail community to out-of-state stores that were going to be at that outlet mall. We provided exceptional city services, including the curbside cleanup program, which was lamentably terminated several years ago. Mayor Mendenhall promised she would restore that program, but she has broken that promise. As mayor, I will restore that popular, beneficial city service for all of our residents.
Yeah, thank you.
We did all that we did in a very fiscally responsible manner. Never raising property taxes during my 8 years in office. In contrast to the recent almost 5% increase in property taxes on top of the enormous recent bond at the behest of our current mayor, who often seems to have no fiscal restraint. We also operated well within our revenues and actually increased the city's reserves. That's basically the rainy day fund in case you need it in the future. We increased the city's reserves more than 62% when I was mayor, which was absolutely unprecedented.
Yeah.
We also consistently had our sights on repairing and improving our city's infrastructure, which had been severely neglected, increasing the investment in infrastructure over 100% as a proportion of revenues. One Salt Lake City Streets Division truck driver said to me at a recent police raid and eviction where they go in and they run homeless people off, and the one I went to, this one I'm talking about, there were no businesses or residents adversely impacted whatsoever. But they went in, ran them off, came in with their heavy equipment, stole their property, crushed tents, and dumped all the property into trucks headed for the landfill. Well, when I was at that raid, I went over and asked the city streets division worker who was driving one of the trucks, what do you think about being involved in this today? His response, verbatim, our roads are crumbling. We should be out laying asphalt today, but this is what they have us doing. We prioritized affordable housing, spending over $46 million on housing, granting 170 first-time home buyer loans, and creating 3,436 affordable units and 357 market rate units. Today, Salt Lake City has become absolutely unaffordable for the vast majority of people. I will reverse this terrible trend, working with a team that has expertise as we look at best practices not only around the country but around the world. And we will pursue innovative ways of providing far more affordable housing for people at all economic levels, directly building social and co-op housing if necessary, as other cities around the world do. We will be a national example of how to transform an unaffordable community to being affordable for people at all economic levels again. Inclusiveness and the valuing of diversity was core to virtually everything we did when I was mayor. I received the Profile and Courage Award from the nation's largest Latino organization, the League of United Latin American Citizens, largely because of my advocacy for sensible and compassionate immigration reform. And we were very vocal about that, not only locally, but nationally. We never held back when national policy impacted people in our community. And because of my Family to Family program that we set up to assist families impacted by the grandstanding INS raid of immigrant workers at the Salt Lake City International Airport, and our successful battle, for which we were very proud, against Utah's English-only law.
Yeah.
We didn't just use slogans. We didn't just talk about diversity. We aggressively recruited for employment positions and for seats on Salt Lake City's boards and commissions. By the way, many of those seats remain unfilled right now. But we went out and recruited and aggressively filled them so that without compromising on quality, we diversified the city's staff and boards and commissions in unprecedented fashion. During my term in office, and we kept this in front of us at all times, that's the only way you make these kinds of changes. During my term in office, 31% of appointments to city boards and commissions were from ethnic minority communities. We increased the percentage of the city workforce from the ethnic minority community by 37%. The percentage of city officials and administrators, those with higher levels of responsibility and compensation from the entire minority community, increased 47% during my term. And the percentage of the mayor's office employees from the ethnic minority community increased 58%. And let me tell you, they did one hell of a job for our office, for the city administration as a whole, and for this community. They're people that we could all be so proud of for the work they did, and some of them are here with us today. We meant it when we made our administration slogan, "Strength through diversity," and it showed. I vigorously advocated for marriage equality since 1996, when most politicians, including most Utah Democratic Party leaders, opposed same-sex marriage. A lot of people take the rights that we have now for granted. They need to understand this was a real fight, even that recently, and there are a lot of people that we would view as our allies politically that were on the other side opposing fundamental equality and fundamental dignity in our communities. As mayor, I issued an executive order guaranteeing equal rights for all Salt Lake City Corporation employees, regardless of sexual orientation, when the city council refused to provide such a guarantee by ordinance. Because I led the way on these issues of fundamental equity and dignity, I was named by the National Human Rights Campaign as one of the top 10 straight advocates in the United States for, as they put it then, GLBT equality.
Yeah!
And for me, that was a great honor, but even more importantly, that was an incredible recognition of what a place like Salt Lake City can do when you have the right leadership and we can all come together as in a mass movement for fairer treatment, for equality, and greater equity, dignity, and respect. When you look around Salt Lake City, you can still see many of the changes we brought about. A lot of them are visible, including the life-saving pedestrian flags and the middle of the street traffic calming parking along 3rd South and 3rd East. I worked hard to raise funds for the Celebration of Life monument, fountain, and sculptures at Library Square. Even after I was out as mayor, they had me come back and raise money for the renovation of the Celebration of Life monument, which celebrates, honors, and encourages life-saving organ donations. It's the only one of its kind in the country. Our vast improvements of our parks, under the great leadership of Rick Graham, who's also here, the Director of Public Services, who had a portfolio that I couldn't believe one person could do such an amazing job across the board with all the responsibilities he had. But you look at those changes we made at Liberty Park, Pioneer Park, Cottonwood Park, and other parks throughout the city, which continue to enhance the quality of life in our city. When we are faced with a public health problem, when we were faced, and I'm talking about the Liberty Park now, when we were faced with a public health problem with the original magnificent Seven Canyons fountain at Liberty Park, we didn't pull together committees and task forces and consultants and spend hundreds of thousands of dollars and delay the matter for years. We went out, raised the money, solved the problem, and we reopened the popular fountain to the public. During the past several years, actually under the last 2 administrations, the Seven Canyons fountain has been closed. It's closed to this day with interminable delays by 2 administrations and a lot of money wasted on bureaucratic nonsense and expensive consultants. When I am mayor, we will expeditiously repair what needs to be repaired and open Seven Canyons fountain for the public's enjoyment once again. We will also waste no more time in working out a development plan for the old public safety building and the surrounding city-owned property, which is laid dormant, a public nuisance and an eyesore during the past 2 administrations. Public safety and security are the #1 job for any city government. If you don't have safety and security in your community, the rest of it doesn't really matter so much, does it? We constructively changed the culture of the Salt Lake City Police Department when I was mayor. Our police officers knew I respected and was grateful for them, recognizing they put it all on the line as they go out and work to make our community safe and secure and help those who are in need. But they also knew that I insisted, and that the police chiefs that I appointed insisted, that they conduct themselves professionally and respectfully toward those they encountered. They knew there would be full accountability for any abuses. As a private lawyer, I had represented plaintiffs in abuse cases against police officers. And yet, even with that history, the police union voted to endorse me when I first ran for mayor, and it was upon the motion of an officer I had once sued. He had that kind of faith in me that we could provide a culture in the police department that would raise morale and also provide for the safety and security needs of the people of Salt Lake City. I created and implemented the city's first civilian review board to investigate and make recommendations in individual cases where abusive misconduct by police officers was claimed. I introduced the crisis intervention team to the police department. It was the first one in the state to make certain that our officers recognized mental illness when they were confronted with it, and that they knew how to deal with it, including by de-escalating encounters. There is no doubt in my mind that that saved lives. That important progress has been decimated, as reflected during the Mendenhall administration by the death of Megan Mullen, a homeless woman at the hands of 3 Salt Lake City police officers, and the shooting of an autistic boy causing life-changing injuries after his mother called 911. She called the police for help in dealing with him during a breakdown. The police came and that boy was shot. That tragedy cost the city $3 million in the settlement of a lawsuit brought by the boy's family. We also made our expectations clear that first responders are to utilize their training and experience in providing for the protection of those they encounter. That progress, too, has been reversed, as reflected recently by the failure of 2 police officers to provide any aid whatsoever. Didn't even bother to utilize what we all learned in scouting or in first aid classes. When he was bleeding out, they didn't even apply pressure. They didn't touch the man as he was bleeding to death. Well, those officers waited over 8 minutes for an ambulance to arrive. Appallingly, the mayor and the police chief have both stated that they support the 2 officers in their failure to render any help to Ryan Outlaw, who died 2 hours later. He was a black man whose father lives out of state, has reasonably asked, what good is the training if the police aren't going to use it? That failure to render aid may be good enough for the current mayor and the current chief of police, but it is not at all good enough for me, and I submit it is not good enough for the people of this community. Chris Burbank, who I appointed as chief of police, and I believe he's here with us today. Chris? And he's happy to talk to any of you about the experience. He'll tell you that I said, I was the mayor. I didn't leave it to the police chief. We talk about it. We might even argue once in a while, but I knew the buck stopped with the mayor. Now the mayor says, oh, I leave setting the response time goals to the chief of police. Well, Chief Burbank will tell you that I set a goal of 6 minutes or less for police response times in top priority calls for help, and that the Salt Lake City Police Department routinely met or beat that goal. He'll also tell you that I focused intensely on the issue, checking with him often to make certain that response times were meeting the safety needs of the public. And I'll tell you, Chief Burbank worked his heart out for the safety of this community to make certain that our first responders did what they were supposed to do.
Thank you.
Now, the Salt Lake City Police Department has had a terrible record under the Mendenhall administration. Its average response times for priority 1 calls from September 2021 through September of the next year were an astounding 12 minutes. In August 2020, the average priority response time, these were the averages. So some of them went even beyond this. The average response time for priority calls, priority 1 calls was 18 and a half minutes. Instead of doing whatever is required to meet its prior goal, the Salt Lake City Police Department leadership, which does answer to the mayor, has basically said, well, we don't do a very good job, so we're going to compromise our goal. We're going to make our goal twice as long for response times as what we told you it was before, and they're not even meeting that goal. But they're saying that their goal now, seldom attained, is of an average response of 10 minutes. A 10-minute response time goal may be good enough for the mayor, it may be good enough for our chief of police, but it's not good enough for me, nor, I am sure, is it good enough for our community, and especially for those who are making emergency calls and find that the police don't show up when they're needed. That's an entirely unacceptable goal for emergency calls to the police, and it is among the least ambitious of goals by police departments throughout the state of Utah. Chris Bertram, the former deputy chief of the Unified Police Department, has said that a 10-minute goal scares, that's the word he used, scares him because one of his children lives in Salt Lake City. He has said a 10-minute goal is not, these are his words, not an expectation that the public should have. It took police an outrageous 28 minutes to respond to a 911 call about a suspected rape in progress. In another instance, an emergency call was made regarding an assault on an elderly woman. You can hear that woman's cries in the background on the 911 call. The dispatcher said, people who called, it looks like I do have officers on the way. Yet police officers did not show up until more than an hour later. A man came into a boutique clothing shop and then threatened employees that he was going to go get a gun and return and shoot the place up. That's what he told them. Of course, they go to the phone, call 911, reported the threat. One employee stated, my mind just went to Atlanta and Denver and everywhere else that there's been a mass shooting as of late. Could this be it for me? Well, of course the employees thought police would arrive immediately to protect them. The police failed to show up at all before the store was finally closed. And the owner was quoted saying, I was appalled. I was devastated and appalled and terrified for my employees. When confronted about the slow response times and the new extremely slow response goal of our police department, Chief Brown said, these were his words, Salt Lake City is a safe community. quote unquote. In fact, the city is so unsafe, former police officers have said they're moving or have moved their families out of the city, and businesses are having to hire their own security staff. Chief Brown recently appeared for a press conference. As many of the members of the media here today probably attended that press conference with Mayor Mendenhall, during which they absolutely misled the media and hence the public, falsely claiming that violent crime in Salt Lake City has decreased. They blatantly cherry-picked the data, talking about changes in 3 tiny areas of the city from one selected month this year as compared to that selected month the year before. That was an incredible deception. The very written report that they had with them during that press conference that they were touting expressly states, and it's on page 2 of the executive summary, you can go to it, you can find it in 2 minutes online. It states expressly that violent crime has increased about 20% in the past 2 years in Salt Lake City, due in large part to more aggravated assaults. Skyrocketing violent crime, combined with outrageously long police response times, means an increasingly dangerous, frightening city for everyone. And the excuses simply don't cut it. When they talk about, oh, we're trying to hire more officers, let me tell you, and Chief Burbank will tell you the same thing. There are far more police officers. Chief Burbank says 150 more officers in Salt Lake City now than when I was mayor and Chris Burbank was chief of police, and the budget for the police department has skyrocketed, with the current mayor capitulating to the police union to such an extreme that the police union head bragged that the recent negotiated contract providing for a 30% increase for new hires was, as he put it, the union negotiator said this about the result of the negotiations. They got everything they could have hoped for and more. With far more officers and far greater expense, the public response times are more than double what they were when Chris Burbank and I worked together. In one news report, Matt Evans, a retired Salt Lake City Police Department sergeant, said he has left Salt Lake City because of the city's high crime and the inability of the police department to respond quickly. A good friend of mine, I hope he's here, he's on his way over, a good friend of mine at a location that is perhaps an 8-minute walk from police headquarters, caught a man stealing property from his car. It was broad daylight. My friend caught the man, who then pulled a knife on my friend. Assault with a deadly weapon. My friend got the knife away from the thief and assailant, held him down, and called 911 and explained exactly what had happened. After waiting in vain as he's holding this man down with friends of this man surrounding my friend, yelling at him, saying things like, "You can't touch us." That tells you something about the sense of impunity given the state of policing in this city. After waiting 28 minutes in vain for a police officer to arrive, my friend finally let the man up and he ran off. This is what policing has become under the present administration. We've got a lot of great police officers. We need to let them do their jobs and do it professionally, and we need to set a new culture in our police department where they are there to help and make secure a community for everyone. When I am mayor again, with better leadership of the Salt Lake City Police Department, we will again set a goal of an average of 6 minutes or less for the police to respond to a priority 1 call, and we will attain it as we did before.
Yeah.
I I initially ran for Salt Lake City mayor because I was passionate about the changes we could make in environmental programs, policing and public safety, affordable housing, long-term community planning, the valuing of diversity, youth programs, restorative justice, community building, and combating sprawl, pollution, and corruption. After building a stellar team, welcoming innovation and creative solutions, and developing nonpartisan collaborations, as with the Alliance for Unity, convened by John Huntsman Sr. and me, we achieved so many great things, many of which were acclaimed nationally and even internationally. Now our city is degraded, crime-ridden, dangerous, filthy in so many areas, and cruel toward the members of the homeless community, without even a coherent plan from our mayor. Businesses are leaving, or like the business where we're located today, Salon, they're contemplating leaving because of the absence of effective leadership in the midst of this tragic deterioration of our city. I encourage everyone to watch the video in my Instagram account of Randy Topham, who you heard from earlier today, recounting the disturbing experiences of him, his employees, and customers, and the unresponsiveness of city government, including the police department. As a practitioner and proponent of restorative justice, I am opposed to simply jailing or imprisoning people who can benefit from treatment or programming. But no one is going to get any help if we all just turn a blind eye to destructive, dangerous, illegal conduct and allow it to continue. When someone very dear to me was addicted to a terrible drug, she was headed toward the destruction of her life and her relationships. She got treatment and stopped taking the drug only after she was arrested and required to get treatment as a condition to avoiding more involvement in the criminal justice system. It transformed her life and her relationships. Our families sometimes engage in interventions. I've had this experience. We have interventions in our families with our loved ones. If we truly mean it when we refer to people in need as our brothers and our sisters, our community must engage in interventions as well, helping people transform their lives with treatment, support, and if they are experiencing homelessness, transitional housing with effective wraparound services and treatment.
Yeah.
We must stop the cruel, inhumane, repetitive police raids and evictions of homeless people from their camps and the stealing of their property unless and until there are alternative options for them. We've got to provide those options. I strongly advocate, and to my knowledge, the 2 council members from the west side in our city advocate, and as mayor, I will implement 1 or more central, secure, sanctioned camps following the successful example of Haven for Hope in San Antonio with toilets. The present mayor won't even put out public toilets. But it will have toilets, showers, laundry facilities, food, caseworkers, and rules that must be followed. And we can eliminate the encampments that are being moved around by the present administration from one place to another throughout our community, while she's paying our streets division people and our police time and a half to harass and traumatize and impose this cruelty upon those who are most in need in our community.
Yeah.
The Salt Lake Tribune reported the candid observations of one police officer. He said, Well, the article said, even when police or county health officials clear people from an area, Salt Lake City Police Department Captain Derek Diamond told city officials that officers know most campers don't have other options and will likely set up somewhere else, and officers will likely be instructed to clear that space too. How insane and cruel and inhumane is that? And without any other plan by our mayor or our city council. I love this city, and I love the people of the city. And this city has been so severely transformed and degraded. I have tried without success, as a concerned citizen, engaging initially in polite correspondence, trying to get people's attention, and trying to get the implementation of solutions, even just the provision of safe public toilets for those who need to relieve themselves and who have no access to public toilets. And I communicated that to the mayor and certain members of the city council. Because of their do-nothing attitude, because of the mayor's lack of candor and accessibility, and because of the deterioration of our city resulting from an absence of effective, compassionate leadership, I have determined that with the support of many conscientious, committed people in this community, I am running to once again serve the city as its mayor. As I did before, which is quite the opposite of what we see from the current administration, my administration and I personally will be open and entirely accessible to the people of our city. Not only meeting one-on-one on a regular basis with community members and promptly returning phone calls and correspondence, but also, as before, holding monthly open Saturday meetings with the mayor at local businesses where we'll have all the heads of our cabinet, our departments there to also answer questions, hear about problems, and figure out how to solve those problems. And we'll also have monthly evening press and community conferences at which anyone can challenge, question, and inform us in an open, respectful setting where any members of the media are welcome to report whatever it is that's on the mind of those members of our community, which it will be our job to serve.
Yeah.
And if a resident and even members of the media want to know information about city government, to the extent possible, we will provide the information. And unless necessary, we will not require a grammar request from the people we're here to serve. City government will once again be open and transparent as it was during the 8 years I served as mayor. I look forward to an open, fair, and positive campaign about the relative records and achievements and capabilities of the candidates, both in and outside of government, and an informative campaign that will allow voters to decide who is best suited to lead our great city toward a future we all deserve.